Paul teaches us in Colossians that not only were all things created by Jesus, but all things were created for Jesus. We as First Baptist Church of Clay, Kentucky, we exist not for ourselves, not for the community, not for the world, but we exist for Jesus. You as an individual were created by God in your mother's womb for Jesus, and then we are told that we were created in Christ Jesus, meaning we were born again. We were saved in Christ for the purpose of glorifying God through good works. So the church, we individually, we are here for Jesus. As a result, since Christ created us and he created us for himself, he is the head of the body, church. You cut off somebody's hand, they're going to be injured. They're going to be in pain. They're not going to be they're not going to be able to function in life as well as they could, but that person will survive. But you can take out a kidney. You can even get a kidney transplant. You can get a new kidney to take its place. You might die, but there's a good chance you'll survive. But you cut off somebody's head. We hadn't found a way to replace that yet. You remove the head from the body, and there's immediate and instantaneous death. There's no coming back from that. Jesus is the head. He is the most important part. Verse 18 says that he is the head so that in everything we do, that Christ would be preeminent, that he would be at the forefront. Everything that we do here in the church, our goal is Christ. Christ is our ending place, but Christ is also our starting place. Our motivation and our intent is Christ. Our goal is the glory of Christ. And it also says that everything we do is through Christ. He is our beginning, he's our ending, and he is everything in between. Which is why it is so important to keep Christ preeminent. It's very easy, really, as we've looked at over this last 5 or 6 weeks, looking at cleaning the inside as opposed to merely washing ourselves externally. It's very easy to erect idols of our hearts. We're working for God's glory, but alongside of that, I'm building my own kingdom. I'm working for my own happiness, for my own glory, for my own reputation, for my own blessings. And what happens is that these other things that we are worshiping sometimes become preeminent. It's like the nation of Israel. They never stopped worshiping Yahweh. They just moved these idols in alongside. And so at no point could they ever say, you're not worshiping Yahweh. Hold on, I am still worshiping Yahweh. I'm just worshiping Baal along with Yahweh. Well, we do the same thing. We, out our own happiness, don't I have a right to be happy? Don't I have a right to be respected? Suddenly, our happiness is right up there in regards to preeminence with Christ. And when these idols become preeminent, the church loses its head. And when a church loses its head, it dies. A selfish, self-seeking, self-centered church cannot live because it's removed its head. There's no transplant. There's no replacement. There's just death. What about you in your individual life? Can you honestly say that Christ is preeminent? Is Christ in everything that he says in his word? Is that your motive in everything you do? Inside right now, you may be thinking, well, hold on, Brother James, everything? Christ be preeminent in everything? Well, that's right, everything. Verse 18 says that Christ wants to be preeminent in every part of your life. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this, that whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, you do all for the glory of God. Why do you think he put eating and drinking there? Because those are some of the most mundane, menial tasks that we take place, that we do. So sometimes we think this living for God, this glorifying God, is in the major and the spiritual aspects of life. But God says, I want Christ to be at the forefront of your life, even in the menial task of eating and drinking. I want the glory of Christ to be your motivation when you eat that hot dog tomorrow for Memorial Day. Let me ask you this. I talked about this some last week, and especially last Sunday night. But when you came to church this morning, what was your motivation? Why are you here? We mentioned last Sunday night there can be a lot of seemingly good motivations, but there's really only one right motivation. Did you struggle to get out of bed this morning and make yourself get ready because you didn't want to miss a blessing? We hear that a lot, right? I'm so glad that I came today. I would have missed a blessing. Or maybe the inverse of that. I'm so mad at myself for not going to church. I probably missed a blessing today. Maybe our motivation is so that I can come and learn. I want to grow in knowledge. I want to be edified. Maybe we think that the purpose of worship is evangelism. That preacher needs to preach on the gospel more so that more people can be saved. Maybe I need to come to church and get my children here to appease this guilty conscience. I just feel bad when I don't wake up and get my children here. So, boy, I really need to get to church today so I don't feel guilty over this Memorial Day weekend. Well, in doing so, we have suddenly moved all of these other things to preeminent. While all of these things are good, learning and being edified, while coming and being blessed is good, while evangelism is good, while in some ways doing things so that we don't feel guilty is good. All of these are results of proper worship. They're not our main motivation for worship. As we said last Sunday morning, worship comes from the Anglo word worthship. Worship's really hard to say, so over the centuries, the T and the H dropped, and we just get worship. But the word originated as worthship. It means to ascribe to something the worth that it is due. So when we come to worship God, we are ascribing to God the worth that He is due. We are reflecting on His worthiness, and then out of the overflow of our hearts, responding in praise because He is worthy. So, was that your motivation? Did you get out of bed to bless God's holy name, or get out of bed this morning so that you can be blessed? Folks, do you see how Satan works? He so easily takes good desires and twists them to suddenly a desire to be blessed by God becomes preeminent over a desire to bless God. Just very easily in our hearts, we have erected idols of me being blessed, and we don't even recognize it. What does this matter, you might ask? Well, think about this. Let's say that your motivation in coming to church today was just what we've been talking about. You wanted to come to church today to get a blessing. You've been struggling, you've been down, so you decide you need to get up and come to church to get that pick me up that you think you've been needing. You come with hopes that the pastor is going to preach this feel good sermon that's going to meet your felt needs and leave you with that pick me up. But instead, that old preacher preaches a sermon that convicts you of sin and leaves you feeling guilty. Now, what's your response to that going to be? Anger? Frustration? Well, I didn't get what I came to get. I could have stayed in bed and slept for another 2 hours, got that rest I needed. I could have gone and visited my parents. I could have done something else, but I came to get that blessing and I didn't get it. I want that pastor to make me feel better, yet he made me feel worse. Yet think about this. Are you unhappy with something church related this morning? Are you unhappy because you are being denied something you want? Or unhappy because God is being denied something that He wants? What's at the heart of your unhappiness? What's at the heart of your anger? What's at the heart of your frustration? Is it that you're not getting what you want? or that God's not getting what he wants. If you are unhappy about being denied something you want, then you are worshiping self and denying God what he wants, which is your worship. But if our motivation is Christ, if Christ is preeminent in all things, not my feelings or my blessings being preeminent, but Christ is preeminent, then Christ is going to be glorified through the preaching and receiving of his word. And even if I came today hoping for this feel good, pick me up sermon, then when I hear his word and apply it to my life, so that I can be more pleasing in his sight, then God is going to be glorified in my life. And when God is glorified in my life, then I am going to get that pick me up that I want. You see, God's blessings are a result of proper worship. They flow from me being Christ-centered. But so easy, we get that twisted around. We get it backwards. And we think Christ is glorified when I'm happy. So we've got to come to this understanding that we exist for Christ. We come to church for Christ. We reconcile relationships in the church not because it's easy, but for Christ. We are faithful and we serve in the church not for our own blessings, but because Christ is worthy of my service. But who's in charge? Christ. That is the only answer. That is always the answer. If there's any other answer than that, the church has lost its head. Who is in charge? It's Christ. I never get to do what I want to do. You never get to do what you want to do. None of us get to do what we want to do. We get to do what Christ wants us to do. And we think about the book of Psalms. Delight yourselves in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. When we make Christ's preeminence our motivation, and we delight in making Christ preeminent, God delights in giving us what we desire. But when we erect idols and we say, I want my blessing this morning, God may not give you that. Because he wants you here to worship Christ, not yourself.